Welcome to the next episode of Small Business Legal Tips. I'm attorney Mark Bross of Bross Law LLC. I'm a practicing business attorney with over 15 years of experience of helping Massachusetts small business owners build legally sound businesses from the ground up. Today, we're going to talk about one of the biggest milestones in your business: hiring your first employee. Congratulations! It means your business is really growing, and that's something to be really proud of. But in Massachusetts, there are specific legal steps you have to follow before that person ever shows up for the first day of work. Miss one of them, and you're potentially looking at fines, penalties, and possibly a visit from the Massachusetts Attorney General or federal and state taxing authorities. And nobody wants that. In this video, I'll walk you through 9 steps you need to take when hiring your first employee in Massachusetts. We'll go through each step one by one so that you'll understand exactly what you need to do when hiring an employee so that you're compliant with the law. And if you find this tip helpful, please like the video, ring the bell, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel and lets me know you'd like to receive more helpful legal tips like this one. So let's get to it. The first step to take in order to hire your first employee is to register with the federal and state tax authorities if you haven't already done so. The federal tax authority, of course, is the Internal Revenue Service, also called the IRS, and the state tax authority is the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, also called the DOR. To register with either one, you need to first obtain a Federal Employment Identification Number, also called an EIN, which you can obtain online directly from the IRS. I'll put a link to the website below. You may have already obtained an EIN in connection with opening your business bank account, so if you already have one, there's no need to get a new one. However, either way, in preparation for hiring and paying Massachusetts employees, you need to also register your business with the Massachusetts DOR and the IRS so that you can withhold and pay various taxes in connection with having employees, which we'll talk about in a moment. The second step to take in connection with hiring your first employee is to have your new employee complete the U.S. Citizens and Immigration Services I-9 form, which is called the Employment Eligibility Verification Form. The purpose of the I-9 is to verify that the new employee is authorized to work in the U.S. The form can be obtained from the USCIS's website, and I'll put a link to the form below. The I-9 has 2 sections and needs to be completed by both the new employee and by you, the employer. Your new employee fills out Section 1 by their first day of work. Then you, as the employer, have to complete Section 2 within 3 business days of the employee's start date. Section 2 is where you verify their identity and their legal right to work in the United States, and you do this by examining certain types of documents such as Social Security cards, driver's licenses, passports, or possibly various other documents. Make sure to follow the instructions on the I-9 form about which documents are acceptable to show proof of eligibility for working in the U.S. Now, here's a mistake I see all the time. Business owners often accept a photocopy of a document, such as a Social Security card, or they let their employee email them a photo of their photo ID, and they think that that's good enough. It's not. Federal law requires you to physically inspect the original documents in person, and when you sign the I-9 form, you'll be swearing under the pains and penalties of perjury that you physically reviewed the original document. Copies don't count, and your employee must bring in the original documents so you can physically examine it. You can certainly make copies of these documents as supporting documentation for your records and to keep in the employee's personnel file, but you must review the original document in person. That way, if there's ever a question about whether the employee is authorized to work in the U.S., you will have proof that you took the right steps to ensure eligibility for the employee to work in the United States. The completed I-9 form and any documents you copy should be kept in the employee's personnel file for 3 years after the date you hire the person, or 1 year after their employment ends, whichever period is longer. The next step to take in connection with hiring your first employee is to prepare for your federal tax withholding and payment obligations. There are several different types of federal taxes that you'll need to withhold from each paycheck from your new employees and pay to the federal government. The first type, of course, is federal income tax. In order to withhold federal income tax, you need to have your new employee complete IRS Form W-4, which is called the Employee's Withholding Certificate. I'll put a link to the W-4 form below. Each new hire should complete the W-4 form by the first date of employment. The W-4 is used to determine how much of the employee's pay should be withheld for federal income taxes. Do your best to make sure the employee completes the W-4 form properly, as this will be the basis for withholding federal income taxes throughout the year. Keep the completed W-4 form in the employee's personnel file for at least 4 years. The W-4 provides proof that you're withholding federal income taxes according to the employee's instructions, and it needs to be available if the IRS ever requests it. The second type of federal tax is Social Security and Medicare taxes under the Federal Insurance Contribution Act, also called FICA. FICA is a federal tax that both employers and employees pay and includes Medicare tax and Social Security. In 2026, the Social Security tax rate that needs to be withheld from each employee's paycheck is 6.2%, and the Medicare rate is 1.45%. You, as the employer, also has to pay the exact same rates for both Social Security and Medicare. Things change if your new employee is going to be making more than $184,500, and I'll put a link to the IRS website below that discusses how your withholding obligations change for high-wage earners. All withheld employee income taxes and employer and employee Social Security and Medicare taxes must be deposited with the IRS either monthly or weekly. The exact schedule can vary depending on your circumstances, and I'll put a link below to the IRS website that discusses it. The third type of federal tax that you also may need to pay is federal unemployment tax, which is also known as FUTA. The rate is 6% of the first $7,000 of an employee wages paid during the year. You only need to pay FUTA if you paid wages of $1,500 to any employee in any calendar year of the current or previous year, or if you had one or more employee who worked full or part-time in 20 more weeks in the current tax year. Most businesses who have employees qualify, so you should just plan to pay the 6% of the employee's first $7,000 of wages. Payments of FUTA tax must be deposited with the IRS in the month following the first quarter where your FUTA tax liability exceeds $500 for the year. If it never exceeds $500 for the year, the FUTA tax must be paid by January 31st of the following calendar year, along with IRS Form 940, which is the employer's annual federal unemployment tax return. Speaking of IRS Form 940, as part of your planning to hire a new employee, you should also start making plans about how you're going to handle your new federal and Massachusetts tax filing requirement. We'll talk about Massachusetts tax filing requirements in just a moment. But along with IRS Form 940, every employer with employees that receive wages must also file IRS Form 941, which is the employer's quarterly federal tax return. The initial Form 941 must be filed for the quarter in which you first paid wages that are subject to Social Security and Medicare taxes or income tax withholding. The form is due by the end of the month that follows the end of the quarter. Be advised that after you file your first Form 941, you'll need to keep on timely filing Form 941 even if you don't have any employees that were paid during the quarter. In light of these new tax filing requirements, I highly recommend that you get a CPA for your business if you don't already have one. Along with your new federal tax obligations, the next step to take in connection with hiring your first employee is to prepare for your new Massachusetts tax filing obligations too. Like the federal level, there are a couple of different types of taxes that will need to be withheld from every employee's paycheck and paid to the Massachusetts DOR. The first type, of course, is Massachusetts income tax. Massachusetts employers must withhold state personal income taxes from all Massachusetts residents who provide services inside or outside of Massachusetts, and from all non-residents who provide services within the state of Massachusetts. In order to withhold Massachusetts income tax, you'll need to have your new employee complete Form M4, which is the Massachusetts Employees Withholding Exemption Certificate. I'll put a link to the certificate below. This form is nearly identical to the federal W-4 form, but you need to make sure to have your new employee complete this form as well. A lot of new employers skip over this step because they assume the W-4 form covers everything. It doesn't. The federal W-4 form only tells you about federal withholding. The Massachusetts M-4 form is a completely separate form and is required under Massachusetts law. If you're not collecting M-4s from your new employees, you're not withholding state income tax correctly, and this could create a problem for both you and your employees down the road if you're withholding incorrectly. The completed M4 form should be kept in the employee's personnel file along with the W4 form and should also be kept for a period of at least 4 years. All income taxes that are withheld need to be paid to the Mass DOR through their online portal, Mass Tax Connect. I'll put a link to the website below. Along with the payment, you'll also need to file Form M941, which can also be submitted electronically. The frequency of your return and the payments owed to the Massachusetts DOR can vary depending on your projected annual withholding tax that's collected from all employees. I'll put a link to the website below that discusses the different due dates and how to determine when you need to pay and file your returns. The second type of Massachusetts-specific withholding that needs to be collected from each employee's paycheck is for Massachusetts Paid Family Medical Leave, also called PFML. Under PFML, Massachusetts employees are entitled to take up to 26 weeks of combined paid family and medical leave per year. The program is funded through payroll contributions, and depending on the size of your business, those contributions are split between you and your employee. But unless you plan to offer a private self-insured plan for your new employee, which is unusual for most small businesses, for your first employee, you will need to withhold 0.46% of eligible wages from each paycheck for Massachusetts PFML. These withheld PFML amounts need to be deposited with the Massachusetts DOR through Mass Tax Connect every quarter along with a PFML return. The next step to take in connection with hiring your first employee is that you must report certain information to the Massachusetts DOR within 14 days of the employee's start date. You do this through the Massachusetts DOR online portal or by mail. Online is easier, so I recommend that you do it online, and I'll put a link to the website below. I'll also put the address below in case you want to send in the report by mail. The purpose of this report is to locate deadbeat parents who owe child support, and Massachusetts also uses this report as a way to check on unemployment fraud. The information you need to report is pretty straightforward. You'll need to report your employee's name, address, social security number, date of hire, plus your business address, EIN, and related business information. Now, what happens if you don't file this report? The fines are $25 per unreported employee. This might not sound like much, but if Massachusetts finds out that you and your employee intentionally avoided reporting, which is called a conspiracy, that fine can jump up to $500 per hire. Nobody wants to pay extra fines, so it's just easier to file the report. The next step to take in connection with hiring your first employee is to register your business with the Massachusetts Department of Unemployment Assistance, also called the DUA, and pay required contributions into the Massachusetts Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. Registration must be online, and I'll put a link to the website below where you need to register. Once you're registered, you must submit employment wage and detail reports every quarter, and the DUA will calculate the contributions that are due. Contributions are due quarterly. Failure to pay any required contributions will incur interest at the rate of 12% per year from the quarterly due date until the amount is paid in full. The next step to take in connection with hiring your first employee is to obtain workers' compensation insurance for your new employee. All employers operating in Massachusetts are required by law to carry unemployment insurance for their employees. It doesn't matter how many hours the employee works or the type of work that the employee does. Once you have your first employee, you are absolutely required to have workers' compensation insurance no matter how many hours the employee is going to be working for you. The purpose of a workers' compensation policy is to cover your employees if they get injured on the job, and will cover things like medical bills, lost wages, rehabilitation, and other things like that. If your employee gets injured on the job, all claims should be submitted to the insurer who provides the workers' compensation policy. And the penalties for not having a workers' compensation policy can be severe. The Massachusetts Department of Industrial Accidents, called the DIA, will issue a stop work order, which is called an SWO, to all employers that don't carry workers' compensation insurance. Minimum fines are $100 per day, including weekends and holidays, and begin on the date that the SWO was issued and continue until the insurance coverage starts and the fine was paid. Also, if you don't appeal the SWO, your business must close down immediately and remain closed until proof of a workers' compensation insurance policy has been provided to the DIA and all fines have been paid. You might also be subject to criminal penalties and can face up to 1 year in prison. It's far easier to obtain workers' compensation insurance, and so you need to get a policy as soon as you're ready to start hiring employees. Contact an insurance agent or a broker who can help you obtain a workers' compensation insurance policy. The next step you need to take in connection with hiring a new employee is one that catches new employers off guard because it seems so trivial. But you must provide your new employee and display in the workplace all notices and posters that are required by federal and Massachusetts law. And there are a lot of them. I'll put a link to 2 different websites below which can help guide you through the process of the exact workplace posters and notices that you need. The first website is from the U.S. Department of Labor that contains a list of the workplace posters and notices that are required by the federal government. The second website is from the Massachusetts Attorney General that contains a list of the different workplace notices and posters that are required by Massachusetts. Both websites also have links to the posters and notices that are required, so you can just print them out and post them in your workplace. Let me walk you through a couple of key ones that are often looked at by the Fair Labor Division of the Massachusetts Attorney General during an investigation. The first required poster is the Massachusetts Wage and Hour Law poster, which comes from Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 156, Section 16. This poster summarizes all the essential requirements of Massachusetts wage and hour laws, such as minimum wage requirements, break requirements, overtime requirements, and various others. It is critical that you familiarize yourself with all of these requirements to make sure that you don't violate the Massachusetts wage law. The second required notice is the Massachusetts Paid Family Medical Leave Notice. We already discussed Massachusetts PFML earlier in connection with withholdings that you need to make from each employee's paycheck. But one of the requirements of the law is that you're required to give every new employee a written notice of their PFML rights within 30 days of hiring. The required notice can be delivered to them electronically or in paper, and failure to do so can result in fines of $50 to $300 per employee. It's far easier just to give them the notice. The third major notice that you absolutely need to provide to every single employee is the Earned Sick Time Notice, which comes from Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 149, Section 148C. Massachusetts law gives every employee the right to earn sick time 1 hour for every 30 hours worked, up to 40 hours per year. This earned sick time can be taken by the employee in a variety of situations, such as for illness, doctor's appointments, children's illnesses and doctor's appointments, and various other circumstances that are all mandated by law. The earned sick time that's taken by each employee can be paid or unpaid depending on the number of employees that you have. If the employer has more than 11 employees, the earned sick time must be paid. But if the employer has less than 11 employees, the earned sick time can be unpaid, but you still have to provide them the opportunity to take the earned sick time under the circumstances that are mandated by the law. Either way, the entitlement exists, and you are required by law to notify your employees of their right to take earned sick time in writing. You also have to display the earned sick time poster in your workplace. This issue is constantly looked at by the Massachusetts Attorney General's Fair Labor Division and is actively enforced. Employers have been consistently cited and fined for not displaying the poster and not providing the written notice to their employees when they are first hired. If you ever happen to get investigated by the Attorney General for potential Wage Act violations, which I hope you don't, this is one issue they will definitely look at. Beyond these 3 that I just mentioned, there are many others that may need to be displayed. Check out the 2 websites I posted below for more information, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. The next step to take in connection with hiring your first employee is to make sure that you comply with all requirements regarding the payment of wages in Massachusetts. As I've discussed in an earlier video, paying wages in Massachusetts is not as straightforward as you would think, and you need to comply with all requirements regarding timely payment of wages, providing a pay stub, and various other requirements. I won't go into all the details again here, but I'll post a link to the video in the description below. In order to help you meet all the wage payment requirements, I highly recommend that you speak with a payroll provider to help you out. A good payroll provider will help you make sure that you pay your employees properly under Massachusetts law and will help you maintain good records and provide each employee with a pay stub. So there you have it, a 9-step checklist of things you need to do when hiring your first employee in Massachusetts. To summarize, step 1 is to register with tax authorities. Step 2 is to check employee eligibility to work in the United States. Step 3 is to prepare for your new federal tax withholding and payment obligations. Step 4 is to prepare for your new Massachusetts tax withholding and payment obligations. Step 5 is to report your new employee to the Massachusetts DOR. Step 6 is to register for Massachusetts unemployment with the Massachusetts DUA. Step 7 is to obtain workers' compensation insurance. Step 8 is to provide and display all required notices and posters that are required by both federal and Massachusetts law. Step 9 is to comply with all Massachusetts wage payment requirements. Now, I know this might seem overwhelming, but I promise you that you can do this. Hiring your first employee can be stressful, but after you've hired the first one, it gets easier and easier to hire the next one, as many of the steps such as workers' compensation, unemployment registration, and workplace posters are already done and do not need to be repeated. I hope you found this video helpful. If you found it helpful, please hit the like and subscribe button and share it with another Massachusetts business owner who's thinking about hiring their first employee. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode of Small Business Legal Tips.